Storytelling really doesn't change. The principles that I outline in this video, they're going to work 50 years from now, they're going to work 500 years from now. So in this video, we're going to learn some writing techniques from ancient storytellers because they are tried and true. Let's just get right into it because, that's my style. And let's start with number one. Don't forget Hamartia. So Hamartia was a term popularized by Aristotle, and it just means a fatal flaw in one of your characters. See, even 2,800 years ago, they still knew that you didn't want to marry Sue character. And for an example of a fatal flaw, let's look at a guy called Aeschylus, who wrote a play called The Persians about the Battle of Salamis. Now, if you watch the movie 300, Rise of an Empire, you are familiar with the Hollywoodized version of this battle. So the question is, what was Xerxes' Hamartia? What was his fatal flaw? Now, we can debate about several of them, but I think it was his overconfidence. He had the hubris to think that he could defeat the Greeks, and that led to his downfall and the loss of his entire navy. Now, what are some advanced ways that you can use Hamartia in your own books? I'll suggest two. One is the false Hamartia. This is where you present an obvious flaw that sort of masks the deeper secret flaw. For instance, in Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, we think that Gatsby's flaw is his criminality. He is trading in stolen securities and he is bootlegging illegal liquor. But his deeper true flaw is his inability to accept that the past cannot be recreated with Daisy. Another thing that you can try in your book is inverted Hamartia. This is when a character attempts to avoid their perceived flaw, and that actually becomes the main flaw. In The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, Stevens the butler has this crazy fear that he's gonna be unprofessional. And so in order to avoid that, he suppresses all of his personal feelings. But ironically enough, that leads to his greatest flaw, which is his inability to express love for Miss Kenton. And for more help on your writing, I would suggest that you join Bookfox Academy, where I have more than 230 videos on all sorts of fictional topics to help you with your story. And it's kind of better than YouTube for three reasons. One, I can provide support materials like PDFs and whatnot. I can also provide quizzes to help you absorb what you're learning. And three, I have the space to really go deep on a topic for, say, 25 or 30 videos. Anyway, check the link in the description below if you want to learn more about that. Now, this next piece of writing advice, which has really stood the test of time, is number two. Every character needs metamorphosis. What is one of the foundational principles of writing? It's that characters should change. And one of the earliest examples of where change is absolutely essential to the story is Ovid's Metamorphoses, where you see stuff like Daphne becoming a laurel tree to avoid Apollo, or Callisto becoming a bear after being seduced by Zeus. You might be wondering right now, like, okay, but how does this apply to me? So here are two ways that you can use it in your book. The first one is have metamorphosis be a literal plot point. I mean, think of Bram Stoker's Dracula, where people change into vampires. Or Kafka's Metamorphosis, where a guy wakes up and suddenly he's a giant beetle. Or think of The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, where an old man metamorphosizes into a child. Now, some of you are like, well, okay, John, but I'm not really writing in like a surreal or fantastical genre. Okay, that's fine. I think this applies to you too. Look at Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is a story about how immigrants, when they come to the United States, undergo a kind of metamorphosis as they adjust to this new living environment. And that brings me to my second point, which really is about thinking about metamorphosis as kind of a metaphor for character change. In Breaking Bad, we see a character change from a mild-mannered chemistry teacher to this meth kingpin. In The Godfather, we see this metamorphosis from mild-mannered son into this mafia overlord. Now, this next writing technique is probably my favorite one in this video. It is number three, exposing secret identities. So once again, we're drawing from Aristotle, and he is the guy who first named the technique of anagnorisis. This is basically when you have a character's true identity revealed. Now, I have to say right off the bat that this implies that you've laid the foundation for some secret identities. You can't have identity reveals without first planning the secrecy. So a guy called Euripides wrote this play called Iphigenia in Tauris. In this play, Iphigenia was a high priestess who liked to capture Greeks and then sacrifice those prisoners to the gods. But one time, as she's preparing to sacrifice all these Greek strangers, she realizes, oh wait, one of them is my brother. Huge surprise, she had thought he was dead, and guess what? She didn't kill him. So let's look at 3 other examples of anagnorisis in stories and see what else we can learn about secret identities. Look at The Princess Bride, where Buttercup realizes, oh, the dread pirate Roberts is actually my beloved Wesley. There's 2 things to learn from this. 1, a character deliberately keeping their identity secret as a way to test the other character. And then 2, there is a perfectly written moment of reveal as he is rolling down that hill, yelling, "As you wish." Or think about the huge identity reveal in Star Wars when Luke Skywalker learns who his actual father is. It's Darth Vader. What we can learn from this one is it's not only a recognition of who Darth Vader is, it's also Luke completely reevaluating who he is as a person. Try to make your characters realize that they were wrong about themselves. Or take Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, where we see Pip discover that his great benefactor is not Miss Havisham, as he thought all along, but actually Abel Magwitch, who is this convicted felon. This next ancient writing technique is probably the one that's mentioned most often in modern literary circles. It is number 4, in media res. And this just means, as you probably know, to start in the middle of things rather than starting at the beginning. And this comes from the second most famous Homer.
Well, I'm not sure.
No, the other one. Yeah, that's right. Who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. In the Iliad, Homer starts in the 9th year of the Trojan War rather than in year 1, and then he shows us the past through dialogue and flashbacks. And the same thing with the Odyssey. It doesn't start at the beginning of the journey, it starts with Odysseus being held captive on an island. And then it backtracks and tells us how he got there. So if you choose to use in medias res, I want you to beware of these 3 things. 1, the fake action opening. This is sort of a cop-out where you know you're supposed to start close to the action, but you don't want to, so you end up faking it. The fake action opening is where you have a really dramatic scene, but then it's revealed, oh, it's just a movie set. Or you have a character speaking really important, powerful lines, and then you draw away, and they're just saying it to the mirror. A second thing to beware of is confusion overload. If you drop your characters in the middle, you have to do twice as much work to make sure they're oriented in terms of time, in terms of place, and in terms of like what's happening. Because the great danger is if you use in medias res, the reader is going to be frustrated and confused rather than being like, oh yay, straight to the action. And a third thing to watch out for would be a generic death or tragedy. When you start with characters who die that we don't know yet, there's not any sort of emotional attachment to those characters, so the reader is going to be like, I don't care. You have to establish the reader's connection with a specific character before you do something that's going to move them emotionally. Now, here's a little quiz time for you. Do you know what the opposite of in medias res is? Because the Greeks were known for this technique. But the question is, what were the Romans known for? They didn't do this technique. The Romans, on the other hand, used more of a chronological storytelling technique called ab ovo, meaning from the egg. So hey, comment below. Are you more of a Greek storyteller or more of a Roman storyteller? There's not a right or wrong. It's just they're both good techniques to understand when you're trying to decide where to start your story. This next classic writing technique is a lot of fun. It is number 5. Use dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is simply when the reader knows something that the character doesn't. And a great example of this would be Sophocles' play Oedipus Rex. And yeah, this is where Freud got that Oedipus complex. So it's predicted that a child will grow up to kill his father and marry his mother. His parents ship him away to a distant land so the prophecy isn't fulfilled, but lo and behold, he comes back, kills his father, marries his mom. Eesh, 0 stars, would not recommend. And then he ends up pursuing the murderer of his father without knowing that it's him. So the audience knows all along, like, oh, Oedipus, gross, dude, super cringe. So what is the tension in that story? The tension in the story is we are just waiting, okay, when is Oedipus gonna find out? Because we want to see that reaction. Now, when you use dramatic irony, you absolutely need to abide by these 3 rules. 1, don't make characters unreasonably stupid. The reader shouldn't feel as though the character should have figured it out like eons ago, right? The character should feel smart and figure it out at the appropriate time. You don't want dumb characters. 2, you want your characters to do the absolute worst thing because of what they don't know. When using dramatic irony, it's best if they're not making choices that they know are wrong, because then that's that's just an ethical flaw. Instead, it's more of a lack of knowledge that's their problem. And the third rule is follow your genre's conventions. So horror and thriller readers might expect completely different dramatic irony than, say, literary fiction readers. In horror, we might know that the killer's inside the house, but the character doesn't know. While in literary fiction, we might know that the character's self-perception is skewed in some way. They can't see themselves the way that others see them. This next age-old writing technique is an oldie but a goodie. It is number 6, reversal of fortune. Reversal of fortune is actually a really simple idea. It's just when a character is winning and then suddenly losing. And if you want to know the technical Greek term, it is peripeteia. And yeah, it's been around since like 300 AD. And for this one, we're going to look at a really simple example taken from Aesop's fables. Remember the tortoise and the hare and the race between the two of them? The hare races ahead, falls asleep because he's like, I've got so much time. But the tortoise, slow and steady, ends up winning the race. That's a reversal of fortune. Hare thought he was winning. Oh, surprise? No, the tortoise beat you out. And let's look at some modern examples as well. In Ernest Hemingway's Old Man of the Sea, you have Santiago finally catch that big marlin. He finally succeeds, and then the sharks come. His greatest triumph immediately reverses into this horrific situation. Or look at a movie like The Big Short. During the 2008 financial crisis, Michael Burry and others go from being laughing stocks to billionaires, while a lot of really established corporations and Wall Street firms, they end up collapsing. I will say that you can approach this reversal of fortune using one of two techniques. One is that you can tip them off that this reversal of fortune is coming. This is the technique of anticipation. So you make the reader look forward to what's about to happen. And the second choice, which is equally as valid, is just to blindside them with it. And this is the technique of surprise, which works perfectly well. Now for this last writing technique that has stood the test of time, we're looking at number 7, the 3 unities of storytelling. Now, the 3 unities of storytelling originally came from Aristotle, but then it was sort of codified in 16th century Italy, but you know, we're still gonna say it counts. The 3 unities are a unity of action, which means a story should have one principal action, unity of time, which says that a story should take place over a 24-hour period, and unity of place, which says that a story should take place in a single location. Now, some of you are scratching your heads right now like, I don't know about that place and time one, and you got to remember that these rules were written for plays. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense if you're having a play, because that means you don't have to change a whole bunch of sets and you can keep all the action in one particular time period. Yeah, I totally get that. But for novelists, I think those two are a lot less helpful. But I do think the first one, unity of action, is still a helpful principle for novelists. It's good because it's a rule of simplicity, where you can minimize a lot of subplots and a lot of diverging storylines and just concentrate on the one storyline that actually matters. If you think back to Sophocles and Oedipus Rex, there is no part of that story that can be taken out and the story would still work. No, it would all collapse like a house of cards or like a Jenga tower. I do think that the shorter a piece is, the more it needs to have a unity of action. While if you have a big sprawling novel that's 200,000 words long, then okay, like the reader's gonna forgive you for a few digressions because maybe it's really interesting, your digressions and your subplots. So look at the length of your piece and determine, can I get away with stepping away from the main action, or should I really stick to the main task? Okay, click the link below to join my Bookfox Academy, and I hope all of these ageless writing techniques serve you well in your work in progress.